Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Marissa Kozlov. It's great to have you with us for today's eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and martech. Today, we're talking about the state of customer engagement in 2025 based on a new survey from Braze. You'll hear how top brands are blending content and technology, building trust through transparency, and using AI to improve customer experiences. So now let's meet my guest. We have Tara Ramroop, Director of Content Marketing at Braze, who's joining us from San Francisco. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Marissa. Great to be here. Thanks for having
Oh,
me.
I'm so happy you're with us today. You have a great presentation planned, and I'm really excited for our audience. And I just want to also welcome our audience. We're thrilled you're with us, and we'd love to hear where you are joining us from today. So just use that chat on the right side of the screen to share that with us and also to submit your questions. Tara and I will do our best to get to as many of those as we can during the second part of the show in our live Q&A. So Tara has a great presentation planned, as I mentioned before. Tara, over to you. Let's get started.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you again for that warm welcome, Marissa. Happy to be here. As promised, as threatened, I am here to talk about customer engagement. I know it's a topic near and dear to all marketers, but also really all humans who want to connect with their fellow human on the other side of these mediated experiences. Again, introductions. I'm Tara. I'm the Director of Content at Braze. And what is Braze? Just by way of explanation and grounding, Braze is a comprehensive customer engagement platform that powers the interactions between customers and brands. Data is kind of our thing. The platform ingests customer data and behavioral signals, allowing brands to send more personalized and tailored messages to their audience. I've been at Braze for about 6 months, and one of my first projects here was digging into this data and surfacing all of these great insights with my amazing team. And before that, I was at Zendesk, a customer support platform. So I've basically spent much of the last decade thinking about what customers need from the brands that they do business with. And it's a cool space to be in. We're all customers of something. And my point of view is that we all have a point of view about how we want to engage with companies we do business with. And whether we articulate that point of view or not, it's definitely there and it's present. So the basis of my presentation today is the 2025 Customer Engagement Review, which is where all of these insights live. That research tapped more than 2,000 VP and above marketing leaders all over the world, as well as our own Braze customer data points to understand what keeps those leaders up at night. How confident are they in customer sentiment? How are they measuring the success of campaigns? And what are their ultimate goals with customer engagement? And part of that whole content experience is our customer engagement index, which evaluates brands' technical and operational maturity within the realm of customer engagement. ACE brands, as we call them, are our best, the cream of the crop. They're customer-centric, they're leaning on real-time data, and they're orchestrating campaigns with the entire customer lifecycle in mind. And the result for them is ultimately not just a successful campaign or a successful quarter, it's really enduring long-term relationships with customers. So it's a little meta, right? My team, the content marketing team, produces this experience and its derivative assets as a guide, as a tool to engage with our customers. And marketing to marketers is also an interesting space to be in. And I find really that one of the benefits is being able to speak freely about our shared challenges, some of which I'm going to do today. And in the spirit of that shared understanding, and peeking behind the curtain, I'm on a demand gen team. Not all of you are, not all marketers are, and not all content teams are. But I feel like the org chart really and the organization is important for a second there to understand that all marketing teams, wherever you sit, really need to rally around the message and activate a story. And ultimately, marketing to me is the activation of a story. So, digging right into the theme and the trends. So a fascinating thing to me about B2B marketing is that I think we sometimes forget that we don't market to businesses, we market to humans. So the overarching theme of this review really pulls that idea forward. The data was telling us a story about the challenges and the imperative of understanding and acting on customers' digital body language. And we didn't come up with digital body language, but we wanted to foreground this concept because it's really core to what we do at Braze. It's core to what marketers do. You know, we send messages into the world in one way or another. And how do we know that those messages mattered to our intended audience? Which is also kind of, I think, something we do in our personal lives. So still, even with that kind of human foregrounding, the concept of customer engagement doesn't really click with a lot of folks at first blush. But the concept of reading the room and acting accordingly, I think, does. So think of it as using technology to read customer signals, what they say, what they maybe don't say, how they behave, and how they engage with you. And a good platform, one designed to surface the right content to the right customer, can help you do all of that listening at scale and enable you to act on all of those juicy digital signals, both inferred and declared, that customers are sending every day. So here's a bit of leader perspective on the topic. Our co-founder and CEO Bill Magnuson is he's a very technical leader, very close to the product, and I think he frames the technological imperatives here well with the opportunity. Customers are raising the bar, and marketers and their tech stacks have to keep up. Now, on to the trends. No surprise to all of you marketers out there, but in order to really land your messaging, you have to mold your messaging. And that means you need to merge the right content and the right technology to really kind of get that message right. So it's not just a matter of getting, X number of tools in your tech stack. Marketers still have to rely on good old-fashioned creativity and brand voice to ensure that the message that we send, is the right one. And sending a message that actually makes people stop and do something about it is harder than it sounds, which I think everybody here will be very familiar with. Think about, the macroeconomic ripple effects hitting customers for financial services all over the world right now. FinServ companies need to know what customers are looking at on their banking apps, whether they're panic selling, panic searching, or otherwise acting against some of these external variables. And those companies need to respond in kind. The right tools, say, then surface data about all of those behaviors I mentioned and more. But calming market jitters is, I would say, a very content-focused endeavor. What do you have the tools that surface the behavior, but then what do you say? What do you do? What resources do you surface or information do you provide to help your customer? So you have to know some stuff about customer preferences and sentiment before you can really action on that. How do you take action with the right content? So here's a little poll. Safe space, no judgments. How confident are you that your messages are landing with your customers? How do you know what's working? Do you have time to check if it's working? And I encourage everybody to noodle on this question for a little bit, and also kind of think about not only where you would place yourself, but why you place yourself there. So our survey says there's a lot of worry among marketing leaders that messages aren't resonating emotionally with customers. And we all know no emotional resonance, no action. And it doesn't matter how many CTAs there are if someone isn't inspired to do something about what we've just said. So again, how confident or concerned are all of you? Are you among the more than half that are very or extremely concerned? And what tools or processes are you using or do you need to get more confident? The long-awaited takeaway here is that worrying isn't necessarily a bad thing. Surveyed marketers who worried more actually performed better. Here you see that 60% of brands that said they exceeded their revenue goals also had leaders that counted themselves as very concerned about connecting emotionally with customers. So tying it back to human beings again, if I'm worried about my health, I'm going to take steps to understand where I'm at and where I need to get to. And I need to take some actions. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm getting a health tracker. I'm maybe downloading a bunch of apps. And the information I get as a result of taking those actions is then used to adjust my behavior and help me achieve my goals. So there are a lot of words on this slide, but I want to highlight the different ways that we think about balancing what we call the tech-driven approaches and the content-driven approaches to customer engagement. So tech is the tool to support humans in this endeavor. It allows us to personalize communications at scale. AI adjusts content for sentiment. Platforms can automate messages according to milestones like birthdays or wedding dates, and it can capitalize on time sensitivity to build like a sense of urgency into some messages, which we do want to do sometimes. And this is just a sampling of what connecting with customers looks like through a tech lens. Content-driven approaches is kind of maybe to no surprise given my role, but it's kind of what I think of as the fun stuff. Sure, you have channels and you have customer data, but what are you putting on those channels? How are you activating that data in a customer forward way? And this is key. Like, how are you centering the customer and not centering a sense of perhaps internal panic that frankly seeps into a lot of our marketing programs? So going back to that benchmark for the best, here's what so-called ACE brands, again, the cream of the crop, are doing on what they're doing on both the content and tech side of things. They're 16% more likely to use 3 or more channels to engage with customers. But we don't just throw a channel into the mix and cross our fingers. We deploy it strategically alongside the other channels in the mix. One way to be intentional and strategic is personalizing content for the channel that customers are engaging on. So top brands were also 18% more likely to personalize messages by, for example, surfacing products and content based on previous browsing behavior on an e-commerce website, or optimizing send time based on real-time engagement. Lastly, AI enters the chat. Of course it does. Top brands were 39% more likely to use AI to adjust messages based on whether and how recipients engage with previous messages. And don't you worry, we will talk more about AI in a bit. But first, trend 2. As marketing leaders, we know that personalization makes our messaging more relevant, and we know that in order to generate that needed emotion that drives action, consumers have to be on board with us. They have to be inspired by our messages and how we engage with them. And, they want us to use data to engage with them. But personalization also comes with some data privacy concerns, certainly. And so in the course of the survey, we learned that executives are prioritizing ethical data and customer trust as they should. That's great news. And they're finding it hard to strike that right balance of data, timing, and content to responsibly create meaningful engagement. So another pop quiz for the audience, and an engagement activity, if you will. On the topic of personalizing messages to customers, tell us what's holding you back from more advanced personalization in your marketing efforts. If anything, maybe you're nailing it. I want to hear from you. Tell me what the secret sauce is. But what is holding you back, if anything? And please hit the chat with your thoughts. But spoiler alert, our survey says a couple of things in equal measure are holding marketers back from more advanced personalization. 43% of the surveyed marketers were concerned about user consent, an excellent thing to be concerned about. Did consumers consent to their data being used this way? But there was also this kind of interesting internal component where 43% of the surveyed marketers were also concerned about sharing data even internally. And this could speak to a couple of things, namely an organizational pain point, like data silos, where different teams own and manage different data sets and disparate tools. And when that's kind of how teams and companies are organized, letting more folks into the circle can naturally prompt some concerns about too many cooks, right? But the customer-facing result and the customer-facing impact and risk is a fragmented experience. Like if one team manages the loyalty program on one platform and a different team manages the customer lifecycle end-to-end on another, and then those teams don't collaborate or don't talk often enough, that's how we end up with, among other things, redundant or irrelevant messages coming from the same brand. So customers have said that they want more personalized experiences built on their data. And many companies are still hesitant to take that step. In fact, 99% of execs, like the far most, say data privacy concerns impact their plans for advanced personalization. That's a lot of people. And really the takeaway here to me is the imperative of trust. Companies have to trust customers have to trust the brands that they're granting their data access to. And companies have to foster a sense of trust by being responsible and transparent about how that data is used to better serve each of these individuals. And being responsible doesn't only mean checking the compliance box, it also means gathering the most meaningful data you can action on. That's not necessarily all the data. Again, data privacy and compliance aren't the only data-related concern marketers have or should have. There's also managing data appropriately to support transparent, personalized experiences. And the tools and the strategies on the right here are some of the ways that the Braze platform supports data management in service of personalization. But really, regardless of the platform, data management involves being able to cull data, access that data, and then finally activate on that data. And this is a big challenge. Remember the concerns about sharing data internally. If customer insights are managed by multiple teams, you don't have access and you likely can't activate on all of the data. The customer experience then could suffer. So another benchmarking view from our ACE brands on building trust through transparency. More than half of surveyed ACE leaders said they segment customers in real time as new data points come in. Basically, they are establishing trust. They read the room correctly and they act in the moment accordingly. Customers are getting the right messages at the right time based on their behavior. And that goes a long way in prompting those feel-good feelings about whether the people behind the brand or the people sending those messages are actually getting you. Does this brand deserve my business? And also wanted to call out that more than half of ACE leaders import non-customer data into their messaging to further personalize their experiences. So this could be third-party data like weather or location. And location-based offers actually come up a lot in the context of quick service restaurants, for example, like you're near a branch and a deal for free fries comes up on the app. I mean, I personally would action on that if I was near some free fries. So that's just one example. I guess in kind of in sum for this trend, some of these trappings of modern marketing life are essential to give customers what they want and what they're asking for and what they're giving consent to. But foregrounding customers, again, is very key here. They are raising the bar. They're telling us how they want to be marketed to. How are we receiving that information? Like, do we receive that information in the first place? Are we actually listening? And what are we doing with that information, again, if we heard it in the first place? So here we are at trend 3. You know there had to be an AI one, right? But just like our directive of not just like putting a new channel into your tech stack, you can't just put AI on a platform and call it a solution. So let's talk about scaling, experimenting, and iterating those messages and campaigns over time with a little help from your AI copilot. One last poll for you all. We're going to get all of the juicy tidbits out of you. Please tell us how you plan on using AI for customer engagement this year. Again, no wrong answers to any of these questions. We're in the safe space. We really just want to understand how, if at all, you've identified AI as a tool in your customer engagement toolkit. And if not, why not? Is it cost? Are you in wait and see mode with the technology? Tell us in the chat. So again, more spoiler alerts, but one way AI can help is in the testing phase. And I pair these stats together to illustrate the problem I think we're facing as marketers. 79% of execs in our survey said they weren't fully confident in their understanding of user preferences and sentiment. Okay, fine. We'll meet ourselves where we are, right? And 32% of those surveyed want to test engagement strategies, but lack the resources to do so. So what this kind of tells me is that we're going into market and talking to customers in ways that may not be resonating with some or perhaps even most of those people. And AI here can be a solution in analyzing customer sentiment, as evidenced by what the top performing ACE brands are doing. Here, you'll see that ACE brands are 30% more likely to use AI to perform these pulse checks, like, for example, identifying customers who are more likely to churn. They're also 15% more likely to use Gen AI to create images for their campaigns. And of course, using AI to scale creativity is a hot topic. And each brand, especially marketers creating and delivering content across channels, that includes me, needs to establish a point of view on when and how it can be used to scale while preserving that creativity. When we go back to trend one, remember that there's that idea of melding the tech and the content. I think that ties to this as well, is that you have to leave room for creativity because that's how good stories get told. ACE brands were also 15% more likely to use AI to QA content for consistency and brand alignment. Teams are big, teams are busy, teams are also small and busy. AI that's properly trained in your brand voice and your guidelines can really save time for both kinds of teams. So just a quick case study. Panera is one such Braze customer that saw some great results on the AI front. They used an AI-powered decision engine that guided customers through their new menu. So they used a mix of content and tech-driven approaches to deliver this experience. And it totally worked. Like here you see some of the results, namely twice as many people converted. They bought menus from the new item. Huzzah. And so Panera was able to identify customers also that were more likely to churn. And those customers would get incentives to keep them engaged, while actively engaged customers got different content. So in closing, before we kind of open it up for Q&A, there's a lot of data. Like we don't have a data amount problem, a data volume problem, I guess is how I would describe it. There's a lot of data. There are also a lot of tools. And there are a lot of ideas in a lot of very smart minds about what content needs to populate all marketing channels. And it's a beast. I live and breathe it too. But it's an interesting problem to have when we remember to put our org charts away and focus on the customer. And so I invite you to download the full report for further insights. I believe that the QR code is in the Brand Live Resources tab. But with that, Marissa, back to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Tara. That was a great presentation, such great content that you shared. I loved that Panera case study at the end. So thank you for that. Just so good to hear really your take on thinking about ways to mold your messaging, the importance of trust, and also using AI as a co-pilot. I really liked that analogy right there. So Tara, you ready for those questions?
Oh, we'll find out. I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, don't worry. We have some great ones that have come in already. And there's still time. So please, if you have any other questions for Tara, please put those in the chat on the right side of your screen. So Tara, let's start with this one. Earlier in the hour today, you asked how confident our audience was with their messaging. And one viewer asked, how do I know if my messages are resonating or not? What signals should I be looking for?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And going back to the where do you even start? Really, it's are your messages helping you reach your goals? Start with your goals. Like, why are you sending these messages in the first place? Or is it for a product adoption? Do you want, like for the example with Panera, do you want to guide people through like a potentially confusing menu transformation? Like, again, start with your goals. And it sounds simple, but it's really kind of not, because I feel like any of us who've been in a room with multiple teams, it's just like, what problem are we trying to solve? And then you end up with like 5 different answers, right? Like and so I think just really kind of getting clear on what that singular answer, or 3 singular answers to those questions actually are, and then set KPIs based on historical data and evaluate whether those messages then are moving the needle against those goals.
All right.
Is how I would start, and it's just one small step at a time.
Those are great points. I mean, even think about what you want the end result to be. Think about that goal and work towards that. Thank you. So for the second question, for as much data as we have on our customers, we struggle to translate that into insights. Any advice on how to make sense of our data to better understand our customers? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, like tech stacks are overcomplicated. Tech stacks are there's a lot of stuff in there. And really like we advise untangling it with a four-step approach. And that's auditing, aligning, activating, and iterating. So first, knowing what you have. Take stock of where things stand today, starting with your top line goals and working backward. What data do you have? Where does it live? And can your team actually access it? The align component is a thing we like to say is that data is a team sport. Really understand what you need from your cross-functional teams. Like no one team, even if customer engagement is sort of housed within one customer engagement team, it can do it alone. So align your cross-functional teams around shared goals, metrics, and tools. The activate component really kind of this is where things start hitting the customer. Turn that insight into action. Activate your data by putting it into all phases of customer engagement efforts, from audience creation to journey orchestration to even just experimenting with these messages. And iterating, right? You're using the insights to fuel what's next. Like we try something, maybe it doesn't work. Again, go back to your goals. How are you adjusting? What did we learn, and how can we use what we learned to improve on that next time? And I think that the kind of nice thing is that marketers are innately like pretty test and learn sort of people, and so really kind of like lean into that and take what you learned and understand how you can use that to improve over time.
All right, thank you. Tara, our next viewer wants to know how you approach personalization when it comes to first-time or low engagement users where they don't necessarily have that much data on them.
Right, right. No, this one's tricky. Like your first time, right? This is your one and only chance to make a great first impression. No pressure. But personalization, I would say, especially in the form of like action-based messages, that means like prompting customers to do something as your kind of first message, can play a key role in great first impressions. And it can also invite them to come into your world and help, when framed properly, like can help the brand understand the customer, and to kind of kickstart that relationship. So action-based messages. For low engagement, this one's the one that we get all sad about. We're just like, oh, the messages aren't landing. It's very why not? But it's an opportunity. Always diagnose the problem for these low engaged users. Really kind of identify where retention rates are falling off. So if you can identify that moment in the journey, then test future campaigns and strategies to plug that leaky bucket, as someone here in Braze has described it, with more effective personalization. So identify your leak and plug it with more effective personalization.
Those are great strategies. Thank you for sharing that. Our next viewer asks about testing. They say testing is obviously important, but honestly, it's a step we often skip as we're trying to get our campaigns out the door. How do I create a habit or culture of experimentation on my team?
This one's, resources being what they are, who has the time, who has the hours in the day, right? But really start small. I think that starting small can, like for a lot of these, like customer engagement, like sea changes can go a long way. Share wins, for example. Like if you were able to incorporate experimentation in an effective way, let your teams know. Like, spread the word. Let that kind of go viral internally. And also, use testing as a way to ease into new things, perhaps, or new strategies. Like if there's new content, a new campaign, test it against what you did last year, for example, with a cohort of your audience. And if it works, tell people about it. If it doesn't work, tell people about it. And really kind of going back to that, like encouraging people to fall forward, like learn, test, grow, know what you don't know, and adjust accordingly.
All right, thank you. We have time for just a few more questions. How do you identify which channels are connecting best?
I think it's the data. It's if you send an email, and I'm going to make it sound a lot simpler than it is, but if you send an email and an SMS at the same time, and the customer customers don't engage with either of them, then that's telling you something. You're like, well, it doesn't mean that, I have to scrap email, but I have to kind of dig deeper and understand what else this customer is doing and saying indirectly, directly, based on these on their engagement with these channels. Let's say maybe even they open all of your emails and then don't click on anything. Or maybe they're logging into your app constantly, but then not necessarily doing anything about it. So I think these are just different examples and permutations of channel-oriented problems that marketers can really dig into with the right platform. It's a matter of diagnosing not only necessarily where fall off happens, like I talked in the earlier question about plugging that leaky bucket. It's a matter of just kind of diagnosing, like even if the bucket isn't necessarily leaky, like maybe it's just, oh, that one's not for me. I prefer email, or maybe I just kind of prefer to go in the app, and identifying and diagnosing where customers are and meeting them there. Just centering the customer instead of centering our need for them to engage on a channel, I think is the takeaway here.
All right, that's a great point about customer preferences, so thank you. We are going to take one more question. Clearly, there is a lot of upside to using AI. You talked about AI in your third trend, but I don't know the best place to start. Our viewer asks, what's your advice for taking that first step?
AI, it's another kind of elephant in the room, and then like it's a big thing to tackle. And then so similarly to just previous advice, and that start small. Start building a culture of AI. I think a lot of us across disciplines, not just in marketing, are kind of identifying what our individual cultures are of AI actually are. So start small and start building that culture. We're, for example, all pretty familiar with generative AI. That's pretty low risk, and you can use it as a jumping off point, for example, to build content. That's how, my team has experimented with it. I would say, perhaps no surprise since I'm a content person, but really kind of plugging stuff into the bot and seeing what it sends out. Like we, as many of us have done, we don't just sort of publish that and off we go, but it's like it's a helpful kind of, well, how far did it get me? What did I learn as a result of doing that? So start small. And really just we're all, I think, kind of guilty of, can be guilty of boiling the ocean. So, one thing at a time, keep it simple. Maybe use AI to optimize the timing of a campaign. Maybe, like deploy it on a channel and kind of build an understanding of how AI helped you optimize that channel. So instead of doing all the everything, and again, yeah, boiling the ocean, try one thing at a time and start understanding where and how AI can be a solve, and maybe where it isn't as helpful for you or your team at this time. But those would be my primary pieces of advice.
Oh, well, these were great tips. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want to mention before we wrap up today, a number of our viewers have asked about getting that QR code again. So I want to remind all of you that the QR code slide will be in the email post-webinar, or right now you can actually check out the resources tab to download that report. So Tara, thank you again so much for this great content today and for answering all of the questions from our audience. So appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share these insights and kind of talk brain to brain with fellow marketers. And so appreciate the chance to share and talk and learn from all of you as we get into the wrap up.
Oh, absolutely. We loved having you. So just before we wrap up today, I'm just going to take a moment to share a little bit more about what's happening at eMarketer and our media channels. The eMarketer Virtual Summit is back. So on Friday, May 9th, join Principal Analyst Sarah Marzano and others, including me, as we break down the trends, strategies, and innovations shaping commerce media. You'll hear from marketers like PepsiCo, Kettle and Fire, Mave, Chase, Walmart Connect, and Google as well. So register today on our events page at emarketer.com/events. And while you're on that page, you can register for more webinars just like this one. Don't forget to check out our various podcasts, Behind the Numbers, Reimagining Retail, and the Banking and Payments Show, which you can listen everywhere you find podcasts and also watch on Spotify and eMarketer's YouTube channel. And finally, please subscribe to our newsletters. Thank you all for joining us today. And thanks again to Tara, the team at Braze, and our eMarketer Studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We'll see you all on the next Tech Talk.